Rain fell like punishment from the heavens. Cold. Relentless. Each drop sliced against my skin as though the sky itself wanted to remind me that I was still alive. The marketplace was already awake before dawn broke. I could hear it, the low hum of voices, the hiss of torches, the clatter of chains. The smell was thick and heavy, blood, smoke, and wet marble. I hated that I could tell them apart. They called this place the Stone of Mercy. But there was no mercy here. Only spectacle. I could feel their eyes long before I saw them. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Men with gold rings and cruel smiles. Women in velvet, pretending not to stare too long. Soldiers who came for the thrill of it. Priests who pretended this was divine justice. And me. Barefoot. Soaked to the bone. My wrists bound so tight the skin had split days ago. My ankles raw from the chains. The iron collar around my neck heavy, burning cold. They dragged me forward, the guards' hands rough against my arms. I stumbled once, and someone laughed. A high, sharp sound that echoed across the marble like a blade. I kept my head down, but I could feel the whispers. That's her. The cursed one. The girl who burned her own village. I'd stopped defending myself long ago. There's no point when the world's already decided who you are. They didn't know what really happened that night. They didn't see the fire crawl up my arms or the way the sky turned silver when I screamed. They didn't see my mother fall. Or how I ran until my lungs bled. All they saw was the ruin I left behind. The auction block waited ahead, a slab of black stone glistening under the rain. I could see the symbol of Luna carved above it, the moon goddess everyone worshipped but no one understood. She looked down at me now, her marble eyes as cold as the storm. I wondered if she ever pitied her children. The guard shoved me onto the stone. My knees hit hard. My breath caught. The auctioneer, a tall, narrow man with eyes like polished steel, stepped forward, lifting my chin with the end of his staff. "Behold," he said, his voice booming across the square. "The last of the Moonfire bloodline. The cursed daughter of flame." The crowd stirred. Coins clinked. Someone spat near my feet. I said nothing. I wouldn't give them my fear. He turned my face toward them like I was some artifact. "She's 18, he went on. Still alive. Still defiant. A dangerous combination, don't you think?" The back of his hand struck me before I even saw it coming. My head snapped to the side. The taste of iron filled my mouth. The crowd laughed. And through the noise, through the ache, I heard my mother's voice in my memory. "Don't let them see you break, child. Fire remembers who it belongs to." So I lifted my head. The rain ran down my face, and I let it wash away the blood. I met their eyes one by one, the merchant, the soldier, the priest. Their laughter died slowly, like a fire losing air. I saw fear in some of them. Guilt in others. A few couldn't look away. The auctioneer faltered. Just for a heartbeat. Then greed found him again. He turned to the crowd. "Let's start the bidding. 10 gold pieces. 10. 15. 20. Their voices tangled and rose, a song of greed and power. 30. 40. 50. And then, silence. The air changed. The rain slowed. Even the torches seemed to dim. I looked up. From the edge of the square, someone was walking toward us. A man cloaked in black and gold, his hood shadowing his face. He didn't shout a bid. He didn't gesture. He just moved. The crowd parted before him like they were afraid to breathe in his direction. When he stopped, he lifted his head. And the moment our eyes met, something in me went still. The auctioneer cleared his throat, voice trembling. "My lord, do you wish to bid?" The man's answer was calm, quiet, but it carried through the storm like a command. "I'll take her. No price. No hesitation. Just that. People murmured. Some gasped. Others cursed under their breath. The auctioneer swallowed. Alpha Kalen, you honor us, but... I said, the man repeated, softer this time, I'll take her. That name hit the crowd like thunder. Kalen Draven. The Alpha of the Eastern Legion. The one they called the Ruthless. I'd heard stories of him in whispers, the wolf who killed his brother to claim the throne. The one who commanded armies that tore through kingdoms. The one who never bowed to gods or men. And now he was standing before me. My pulse roared in my ears. My wolf stirred beneath my skin, restless and alert. Why him? Why me? The guards released my chains, pushing me toward him. I stumbled, caught myself, and forced my head up. I refused to kneel. Then he did something no one expected. He knelt instead. The entire market froze. Rain dripped from his cloak, pooling at his knees. He reached for my arm, slow, steady, and traced the scars running down from my shoulder to my wrist. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch, it wasn't cruel. It was searching. When he looked up at me, the air left my lungs. There was no disgust in his eyes. No mockery. Only recognition. Like he'd seen these scars before. Like he'd been waiting for them. So it's true, he whispered. The auctioneer leaned closer. What is, my lord? She bears the mark. Lightning flashed, and the world turned white. The priest shouted, the mark of the Flameborn. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People backed away as though my skin might ignite at any second. Kalen didn't move. He reached for the collar around my neck, fingers brushing the cold metal. With one sharp pull, he snapped it apart. The sound echoed like thunder. The guard shouted. The priest started praying. The crowd broke into panic. But I couldn't hear them. Because the moment that collar fell, something inside me roared awake. The wolf stretched. The air vibrated. My pulse beat in time with the storm. And still, he didn't step back. He looked at me with eyes that saw straight through the fear, straight through the scars, straight into the part of me I'd buried beneath years of pain. You belong to no one, he said quietly. Those words hit harder than the slap, the chains, the thunder, all of it. For a second, I didn't know if I wanted to cry or scream or run. The auctioneer started shouting something about curses and omens, but Kalen ignored him completely. He took off his cloak and wrapped it around my shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Come, he said. I didn't move. My legs wouldn't listen. The last time someone reached for me like that, they dragged me into fire. He turned his head slightly. I won't hurt you. And somehow, I believed him. We walked through the chaos, guards shouting, people scattering, thunder crashing overhead. The rain fell harder, washing away the blood and dirt from my skin. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like prey. I glanced up at him once, studying the hard line of his jaw, the way his hands flexed at his sides, the quiet storm in his eyes. He didn't look at me, but I could tell, he felt it too. That pull. That strange, unspoken recognition that hummed in the air between us. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if I wanted to. But as the gates of the marketplace closed behind us, and the roar of the crowd faded into rain, I knew one thing for certain. My story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. And whatever waited beyond that storm, him, the prophecy, the fire, it would change everything. If this story grips your heart, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Stay till the end, my fate is only beginning. The storm followed us. It moved with us, as though it knew who it belonged to. The sky split open, lightning clawing through clouds while thunder rolled like an animal with no master. He didn't look back once. Kalen Draven walked through the chaos with me trailing behind him, my chains dragging against the stone path. I wanted to run, to demand why he'd chosen me, but every time I tried to speak, the weight of his presence crushed the words in my throat. Even the guards, the same ones who had struck me hours ago, kept their distance now. One look from him, and they froze like prey sensing the predator's breath. When we reached the far archway, the market was behind us. The sound of the crowd faded, replaced by the rhythm of rain against steel and stone. He stopped. Turned slightly. "Can you walk?" His voice wasn't cruel. It was low, rough, like gravel rolling over flame. I wanted to say yes. But my knees trembled, and the ache in my wrists pulsed with every heartbeat. "I can," I whispered, though I wasn't sure it was true. He studied me for a moment, then unfastened the last link of my chain with one sharp twist. The iron hit the ground, and for the first time in years, I felt air touch my skin freely. He said nothing more, just turned again and started walking. I followed, because I didn't know where else to go. Because something inside me, something wild and wordless, told me to. The path wound through what remained of the old city, ruined arches, burned walls, roots clawing through the stone. Every ruin whispered of a war long past. I could smell ash beneath the rain. We reached a waiting carriage, black as the sea, drawn by two massive wolves harnessed in silver. Their eyes glowed faintly, gold and feral, but they bowed when he approached. Not out of fear. Out of reverence. He opened the door and looked at me. "Get in." I hesitated. My instinct screamed to run. But the air shifted again, thick with that same pull, that magnetic hum that lived between his heartbeat and mine. I stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit. Candles flickered in metal sconces, their flames steady despite the movement of the storm. The scent was strange, pine, leather, something darker underneath. He sat across from me, silent. I could feel his gaze even when he didn't look directly at me. For a while, there was only the sound of the wheels grinding against the wet earth and the wolves' steady breathing outside. I stared at my hands, filthy and trembling, the half-faded burn mark on my wrist still glowing faintly beneath the skin. Finally, he spoke. "You're not what they think you are." I lifted my head slowly. "And what do you think I am?" He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. His eyes caught the candlelight, gray, sharp, and restless, like a storm trying to remember peace. "Dangerous," he said. "But not damned." I didn't answer. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But the way he said it, steady, like he was reminding me of something I'd forgotten, made something twist in my chest. The road turned. Thunder rumbled. My vision blurred. The exhaustion I'd been holding back crashed over me like a tide. I remember him moving, fast, before I hit the floor of the carriage. Then, nothing. When I woke again, the world had changed. No chains. No rain. Only warmth. I was lying on a bed so soft it almost frightened me. Wolf pelts layered across the sheets, and a faint fire burned in the hearth nearby. Shadows danced across the walls, smooth stone carved with markings I didn't recognize. I sat up slowly. My body protested, but the pain was softer now, dulled by heat and rest. I touched my neck, no collar. My breath caught when I saw him. Kalen was standing near the far window, back turned to me, one hand resting on the stone frame. His cloak was gone. The firelight traced the lines of muscle across his shoulders, the scars that ran down his back like lightning frozen in flesh. He must have heard me move, because he turned. "You're awake," he said quietly. I nodded. My throat was dry. "Where am I?" "In my fortress. The Black Keep." The words made my pulse quicken. Stories about this place filled the old markets, a fortress by the sea where even the moon refused to shine. A place no one left once they entered. "Why bring me here?" He didn't answer right away. He moved toward the fire, his movements measured, deliberate. Then, "You have the mark." My stomach nodded. "You saw it." I did. He looked at me then, and the weight of that gaze pinned me to the bed. It shouldn't exist. Not anymore. I wrapped the pelt tighter around myself. You're saying I should be dead. I'm saying you should be impossible. Silence stretched between us. The fire cracked softly. He walked closer until the air between us felt alive, charged. I could smell the faint scent of rain still clinging to him. My heart betrayed me, beating faster, louder. Do you remember anything before the fire? He asked. I shook my head slowly. Only the screaming. The light. My mother's voice. Then, nothing. Something flickered across his face, grief, maybe, or recognition. It was gone before I could name it. He turned away again. Rest. You'll need it. For what? His jaw tightened. Because when dawn comes, they'll come for you. Who? My council. They'll want to see if the stories are true. And if they are? He met my gaze then, a slow, steady look that made the air in my lungs vanish. Then you'll have no choice but to stay alive. He left after that. No explanations. No reassurances. The door closed, and I was alone again. Except for the wind outside and the sound of the sea crashing against stone far below. I tried to sleep, but the pull in my blood wouldn't let me. Every beat of my heart carried his scent. Every breath replayed the way his eyes had looked at me, not with pity, not with disgust, but something else. Something that frightened me more than hate ever could. When I finally drifted into uneasy sleep, I dreamed of him. Of fire. Of a wolf with eyes the color of storms. I woke before dawn to the sound of distant howling. At first I thought it was the wind, but it carried rhythm, long, mournful, alive. My wolf stirred beneath my skin, restless. The door opened. Kalen stood there, dressed in black again, his expression unreadable. Come. I didn't argue. The air itself seemed to move when he did. We walked through corridors carved from obsidian and bone. Torches lined the walls, their light rippling like molten gold. The scent of the sea grew stronger, cold and wild. He led me to a balcony that overlooked the cliffs. The view stole my breath. The ocean stretched endlessly below us, black waves smashing against jagged rock. Above it, the moon hung low, almost full, silver bleeding into the clouds. Why show me this? I asked. Because this is what power looks like, he said quietly. Endless. Unforgiving. Beautiful. He stepped closer until his presence pressed against mine. You carry the same power in you, Lyra. You just don't know how to wield it. The way he said my name made it sound like a secret he'd been keeping too long. I turned toward him. How do you know me? His jaw flexed. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then. I knew your mother. The words hit harder than I expected. That's impossible. She died in the moonfire. I know. I was there. I froze. You were, what? He looked past me, toward the horizon, his eyes reflecting the storm building over the sea. She tried to stop it. To stop you. My breath caught. You're lying. I wish I was. I took a step back, shaking my head. No. She would never. She did it to save you, he said sharply. To keep the flame from consuming everything. His voice broke then, just slightly, like he'd carried those words for years. My throat tightened. Why tell me this now? Because they'll twist the truth when they come. You deserve to hear it from me first. Something in his tone, that quiet weight, made me believe him, even as my chest burned with denial. He moved closer again. The mark you bear, it's not a curse. It's a promise. Your blood was bound to the moon and the flame long before you were born. I swallowed hard. Then what am I? He looked down at me, and the answer in his eyes made my pulse falter. You're the key, he said softly. To what comes next? Wind surged between us, carrying the scent of salt and rain. The world seemed to shrink to the space between his breath and mine. I should have stepped back. I didn't. His hand lifted, slow and deliberate, tracing the air just above my cheek. He didn't touch me, but I felt it anyway. That strange magnetic pull, stronger now, humming through my skin like static before lightning. You shouldn't be here, I whispered. Neither should you. And then his hand did touch me, fingers brushing my jaw, rough skin against softness. My breath stuttered. The heat from his touch sank deep, burning through every fragile wall I'd built to survive. The bond between us shifted, sharp and undeniable. My wolf rose within me, snarling not in fear but recognition. His eyes widened slightly, as if he felt it too. He stepped back first, breaking whatever fragile tether held us. His breathing was uneven, his composure cracked just for a heartbeat. This shouldn't be possible, he murmured. What? The bond. It only forms once. For life. The words sank into me like ice. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. You're saying that you were never meant to be mine, he cut in, voice low. And yet. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The silence that followed said everything. I turned away, gripping the stone rail. The sea roared below, matching the chaos inside me. When I finally spoke, my voice barely carried. What happens now? He hesitated. Now, we wait for the moon to decide. He left me there, alone with the storm, the truth, and the terrifying pull I couldn't fight. But even after he was gone, I could still feel his warmth on my skin. And deep beneath the noise of the sea and the wind and the fear, I could feel something else, something ancient stirring in my blood. A promise waking. A hunger older than the moon itself. I didn't know if it would save me. Or destroy us both. But for the first time I didn't want to run. The storm lasted through the night. I didn't sleep. Every crack of thunder dragged another memory from the dark corners of my mind, fragments of a life I had buried so deep, I'd started to believe it had belonged to someone else. When dawn came, the fortress was quiet. The halls breathed a kind of silence that only places built for war could hold, still, watchful, listening. The air was heavy with salt and smoke. I wandered through it barefoot, my skin prickling with the chill that crept through stone. The torches along the walls hissed softly as I passed, their flames bending toward me as if drawn to something beneath my skin. Something inside me whispered. Not words. Just a pulse, familiar, rhythmic, like the echo of another heartbeat overlapping mine. When I reached the end of the corridor, I found a tall mirror framed in black iron. My reflection stared back at me, pale skin marked with old scars, eyes too bright for morning. The mark on my shoulder, shaped like a crescent flame, shimmered faintly beneath the thin fabric of my shift. I hated it. I loved it. I feared it. The memories came faster then, flashes, pieces of a life that had never stopped haunting me. My mother's voice, soft but trembling, calling me child of flame. The way she used to press her palm against my heart and whisper, never forget what you are, but never let them see it. My father's voice was different, rougher, filled with anger he never learned how to bury. He used to tell me stories of rebellion, of wolves who refused to bow to crowns forged in blood. He was executed for it, accused of treason against the Luna Council. I remembered the day they dragged him away. The chains. The silence in the village. The look on my mother's face, not of shock, but of inevitability. After that, she changed. She spoke less. Slept less. Watched me as though I were something fragile and dangerous at once. The night it happened, the fire, it started with the moon. Full and bright, but wrong. The color of molten silver. I was 15. The air had been heavy, strange, carrying a hum that made my bones ache. I'd gone out to fetch water from the well, and that's when it started, the heat building under my skin, the world tilting sideways, the screams. And then the light. So bright I thought it was the moon falling. So loud it drowned my own voice. When I opened my eyes again, the village was gone. Only ash. Only silence. Only the smell of silver burning through flesh. I found my mother in what remained of our home, her body wrapped around mine, as if even in death she'd tried to protect me. They called it a curse. Said I'd been born wrong. Said the fire was my punishment, my father's bloodline burning itself clean through me. I believed them. For years, I believed them. They exiled me at dawn. The same priests who once blessed my birth now led me out past the gates, chains around my wrists, my name stripped from the records. I walked for days. Weeks, maybe. I stopped counting after the first moon. The collar they forced on me muted my shift, caged my wolf, left me human enough to survive but hollow enough to wish I hadn't. The scars came later. Some from the hunts. Some from men who thought an exiled girl was fair game. But most from me. From the nights I couldn't bear the silence of my own mind. The worst part wasn't the pain. It was forgetting what it felt like to belong. The fortress walls seemed to hum with those memories as I stood there, staring at my reflection. The flame mark on my shoulder pulsed once, faintly, like it was remembering too. A soft sound broke the silence behind me. Bootsteps. Slow. Steady. Kalen. I didn't turn. I didn't have to. I could feel him, that strange magnetic current that filled every room he entered. His presence was heat and gravity combined, and my body betrayed me every time, leaning subtly toward him no matter how hard I fought it. He stopped a few paces away. You didn't sleep. I kept my eyes on the mirror. Did you? No. The answer came quietly, like the truth didn't need to be dressed up. He came closer. The air shifted. His reflection appeared behind mine, tall, dark, eyes catching the flicker of torchlight. Your mark, he said. It's stronger today. I touched it without thinking. It burns. It's waking, he murmured. What does that mean? He hesitated, then stepped beside me. Our reflections stood shoulder to shoulder now, his calm, mine trembling. When I was a boy, he said, my pack believed the moon chose her warriors through flame. But not fire like this. Not silver. His gaze flicked to my mark. Silver fire belongs to no god I know. Then what am I? He looked at me then, really looked, not like a man studying a mystery, but like someone standing before a wound he didn't know how to heal. I think, he said slowly, you're something the gods tried to hide and failed. I almost laughed, but it came out as a shaky breath instead. That doesn't make me feel better. It's not meant to. The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, the kind that pressed against skin and made every heartbeat sound too loud. He leaned against the stone wall, arms crossed. You saw your village burn? I caused it. He didn't flinch. You think that? I know it. He shook his head slightly. You think the fire was yours. But it wasn't. I turned sharply. Then whose was it? Something older. Something bound to your bloodline long before you were born. He said it like he'd seen it. Like he'd lived it. Tell me, I demanded. Tell me what you know. His eyes darkened, storm meeting sea. You won't want to hear it. I've survived worse. A shadow crossed his expression, quiet and dangerous. I killed my brother, he said suddenly. The words stopped me cold. He didn't look away. During the blood trials. That's how I became Alpha. We were bound by the same oath, the same moon. But only one could lead. And when it came time to fight, he hesitated. I didn't. His voice didn't break, but something inside it did, a fracture too deep for anyone else to notice. I swallowed. Why are you telling me this? Because you think pain makes you unworthy. It doesn't. The words hit me harder than I wanted them to. He stepped closer again. You carry something ancient. So do I. That's why the bond formed. Why you feel it too. I did feel it. Every time he breathed too close, every time his eyes softened in that dangerous way that made my pulse stutter. But I didn't want to admit it. Not when I still saw chains every time I closed my eyes. "You think fate has a plan for us?" I asked. He gave a humorless smile. "Fate doesn't plan. It hunts." He left then, before I could ask what he meant. The silence returned, colder this time. But inside me, the fire stirred. Not burning. Just aware. That night, I couldn't escape my dreams. I stood again in the ashes of my village, only this time, the fire didn't hurt. It called. Silver tongues of flame wrapped around me, whispering my name, not as a curse, but as a command. Lyra. I turned and saw them, wolves made of light and shadow, their eyes glowing white, circling beneath a burning moon. They whispered the same thing over and over, voices weaving through the wind. "Child of flame. Child of flame. Remember." I woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. The fire in the hearth had died, but the mark on my shoulder blazed like molten metal. Outside, I could hear the sea roaring louder than before. The moon was high, painting the room in silver light. I stood, trembling, and crossed to the window. The cliffs below seemed alive, waves exploding against rock with violent grace. I didn't notice Cassian at first, standing on the lower terrace, bare-chested, eyes lifted toward the sky. The moonlight caught his scars, each one a story I hadn't heard yet. I don't know why I went down there. Maybe the fire wanted to be closer to him. Maybe I did. He didn't turn when I approached. "You felt it too." I didn't deny it. "The dreams?" He nodded once. "They come when the bond deepens." "What are they?" "Echoes," he said softly. "Of what was and what's coming. The wolves. The moon. The fire. Prophecy," he finished. The word tasted wrong and right all at once. "I don't want to be part of it," I said quietly. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But some fires aren't meant to die." He turned then, and the look in his eyes stole my breath. It wasn't desire, not fully. It was recognition, the kind that reached deeper than the body, into whatever part of the soul still remembered the beginning of the world. He took a step closer. The air trembled. "Do you still think you're cursed?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to cling to that story because it was easier than believing I might be something more. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The way he looked at me, like I was both the storm and the calm after it, broke something open in me I'd been trying to keep closed for years. "I don't know what I am," I whispered. "Then let me help you find out." His hand reached for mine, slow, steady. For the briefest second, I let him. And in that touch, brief, electric, I felt everything, his strength, his sorrow, his unspoken promise. Then I pulled away. Because even if fate had tied our blood, I wasn't ready to let anyone save me. Not yet. He didn't try to stop me. He just said, "When the fire calls again, don't run from it." I left him there under the moonlight, the sound of waves and wolves filling the air. But as I walked back through the shadowed halls, I realized something had changed. The bond between us wasn't a chain. It was a mirror. And in it, for the first time in years, I saw not the cursed girl they said I was, but the beginning of something unbroken. Still burning. Still becoming. Still mine. The ruins breathe. The air inside Luna's temple feels alive, as though the stones themselves are whispering secrets too ancient for mortal ears. I step through the threshold, and a strange pulse runs beneath my feet, humming through the marble, rising into my chest. The scent of old incense lingers, faint but heavy, mixed with salt and dust and the ghost of prayers once spoken by trembling lips. Cassian's torch flickers in the wind, its flame bending toward me, drawn as though it knows my name. Every sound feels too loud, the drip of water on stone, the crackle of fire, the echo of my own breath. He walks beside me, silent, watchful, his presence grounding me in a world that no longer feels real. The walls are carved with faces, wolves, moons, and women cloaked in flame. Their eyes seem to follow me. My pulse beats faster with each step, a rhythm I can't control. The further I go, the stronger the pull becomes, like invisible threads wrapping around my heart, dragging me towards something waiting deep inside. Kalen's voice breaks the silence. He tells me these ruins were forbidden, that no alpha has entered this place since the last moon war. His tone carries reverence and warning, but when he looks at me, I see something else, fear. He fears what I might find here. Or maybe what I might awaken. I tell him I feel it too. The air feels heavy, thick with something alive. The mosaics shimmer faintly, as though light breathes beneath the stone. I reach out to touch one, a wolf made of fire, and the heat sears my fingertips. The flame doesn't burn me, but it recognizes me. My skin hums, glowing faintly, and Kalen steps closer, his hand hovering near mine as if ready to pull me away. The sound of movement echoes from deeper inside. A figure appears, the old priestess. Her eyes are clouded white, her hair long and silver like moonlight, yet she moves with the grace of something that remembers eternity. Her bare feet glide across the floor, and when she stops before me, the torchlight dims as though the temple itself bows in her presence. Her gaze turns toward me, unseeing yet knowing. When she speaks, her voice trembles like wind through hollow bone. Child of flame, she whispers, and the name sinks into me like a blade. My knees weaken. No one has called me that since the night my world burned. She reaches out, her fingers tracing the air before finding the mark on my shoulder. The touch sends fire racing through my veins. You bear the mark of the flameborn, she murmurs. The one who will either cleanse or consume the packs. The words fall heavy, and for a heartbeat, the world tilts. My chest tightens. My lungs forget how to breathe. I glance at Kalen, searching for denial, for disbelief, but instead, I see recognition. He knew this was possible. He knew something about me that I didn't. The ground beneath us trembles. Ancient symbols etched into the floor begin to glow, forming a circle around us. Flames rise from the carvings, not wild or uncontrolled, but deliberate, a living pulse responding to my presence. The priestess bows her head and whispers an old chant, her voice trembling as the temple hums with power. I feel my heartbeat match the rhythm of the earth. The fire doesn't frighten me anymore. It feels like it's part of me, or I'm part of it. It whispers things I can't understand, old words from before time, promises and warnings woven together. Kalen's face is caught between awe and something rawer, dread. His hand grips his sword, though not out of defense. He's bracing himself, as if what's awakening in me might change everything he believes. The priestess continues speaking, her voice soft yet unrelenting. When the moon bleeds silver, and the alpha kneels before the flame, the world will burn anew. One will rise to heal. One will rise to destroy. Both will share one soul. My breath catches. My pulse roars in my ears. I don't know whether to scream or run. My knees shake, my hands tremble. I tell her she's wrong, that I've only brought ruin everywhere I've gone. Villages burned. People died. I was cursed, not chosen. But the priestess shakes her head. Curses are born from fear of light. You were never cursed, child. You were born from the first spark of the goddess herself. The flames flare brighter, painting Kalen's face in red and gold. His eyes darken, torn between belief and resistance. He steps closer, lowering his voice until it's almost a growl. If that's true, he says, then prophecy demands blood. Mine, or hers. The priestess's silence confirms it. My stomach twists. I feel the air shift, the heat press against my skin. I want to move, but the circle of flame traps me where I stand. I can feel the prophecy digging into my bones, a fate I never asked for wrapping around me like chains made of light. Kalen reaches for me, his hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something heavier. He says my name as if it hurts him to speak it. Lyra, he whispers, the prophecy isn't just about you. It's about us. I don't know what he means. I can't. I want to believe it's a lie, a story spun by those who see monsters where there are none. But the way his gaze burns into me says otherwise. There's something inside him, a recognition, an echo. As if his soul remembers mine from a time before memory itself. The priestess kneels, pressing her palm against the stone. The fire dims, leaving only embers. You were both born beneath the same eclipse, she says. Your fates have been circling each other since before you took your first breath. I feel sick. The air tastes of smoke and destiny. I step back, shaking my head, but there's nowhere to go. My body trembles with something between terror and longing. Every instinct screams to run, yet my feet stay rooted. Kalen doesn't move. He watches me with that same unshakable stillness, his voice quiet, rough. I've spent my whole life fighting fate, he says. But when I saw you on that auction block, I knew. His jaw tightens. You're the reason I'm still alive. The words hit me like a storm. My throat tightens. I don't want to hear them. I don't want this prophecy or whatever bond the goddess thinks she's woven between us. It feels like a trap, a cruel trick from the moon that's watched me suffer my whole life. The priestess stands again, her hands raised to the ceiling. You cannot run from what was written in light, she whispers. You can only choose how you bear it. The torches flicker out, one by one. Only the glow from the floor remains, wrapping around my bare feet like molten silk. I close my eyes, and for a heartbeat, I see flashes, visions not my own. A sea of wolves bowing to a burning sky. Kalen kneeling in the ashes, blood on his hands. My own face reflected in flame, eyes alight with power I can't control. I stumble backward, gasping. The images fade, but their weight lingers. My hands shake uncontrollably. I can still feel the heat of that future pressing against my skin. Kalen catches me before I fall. His grip is firm, steady, grounding. I want to pull away, but his warmth seeps into me, and I can't. I feel his heartbeat against mine, fast, uneven. For a moment, we're caught in something neither of us understands. He says my name again, softer this time, as though saying it might break me free. But all it does is tether me tighter. I meet his eyes, and something passes between us, not just recognition, but surrender. The priestess's final words echo through the chamber, lingering like smoke. The flame will awaken when the heart accepts both love and loss. Until then, the fire sleeps, waiting. The temple falls silent again. The fire dies down, leaving behind only the faint smell of burnt incense and ancient dust. My knees give out, and Kalen lowers me gently to the floor. For a long moment, we just breathe, two broken souls caught in the pull of something older than either of us. When he finally speaks, his voice is quiet but heavy. You're not cursed, Lyra. You're chosen. But destiny doesn't care who it destroys along the way. I look up at him, my vision blurring from tears I didn't know were falling. The flames may have faded, but their heat still burns in my chest. I don't know what the prophecy means for me, for him, or for the world that already wants us both dead. But one truth lingers in the silence between us, whatever comes next, it has already begun. The storm began long before the clouds gathered. It was in the air, sharp, metallic, waiting. I could feel it in the way the pack moved, too disciplined, too quiet, as if even the wind had learned to hold its breath. Kalen had warned me that word would spread fast, but I hadn't realized how quickly a name could become a curse again. They said the Flameborn had returned. They said the cursed girl had bewitched their alpha. They said I was the end of balance, the mark of ruin. And they believed it, because fear is always easier to worship than truth. The council summoned Kalen to the northern keep, stone walls older than most bloodlines, carved with the sigils of alphas who had ruled and fallen. I followed him there in silence, cloaked in the hood he'd given me, pretending the world didn't already know what I was. His hand brushed mine once as we entered the hall, a brief touch meant to calm me, but his palm was cold. Even he was uneasy. The air inside was thick with dominance, alphas from every region, their wolves pacing just beneath the surface. Alaric the Red sat near the fire, his hair as dark as old blood, his eyes gleaming like he already smelled war. Seraphine stood beside him, tall, radiant, and cruelly calm, her silver crown catching the torchlight like a blade. When Caelan took his seat, the murmurs quieted. I stood behind him, my head low, pretending not to notice the way Seraphine's gaze cut straight through the veil of shadow that hid my face. The High Elder's voice broke the silence. "The Flameborn walks again," he said. "And under your protection, Caelan Draven. Do you deny it?" Caelan's jaw clenched. He didn't look back at me. "I deny nothing." The words rippled through the room like thunder. Alaric's laugh was sharp, low. "Then you've doomed yourself. You brought the curse back into our lands. Did you forget what her kind did to the north?" "She isn't a curse," Caelan said, voice steady, though I could feel the tension thrumming through him. "She's flesh and blood. She's one of us." Seraphine tilted her head, her tone almost sweet. "One of us doesn't burn armies to ash. One of us doesn't wake the old fire." The High Elder's staff struck the floor. "Enough," he growled. His gaze turned toward me, and my stomach twisted. "Step forward, girl." I obeyed. The hood fell back, and gasps filled the room. The mark on my shoulder, the crescent flame, glowed faintly, as if answering the council's collective hate. I met their eyes one by one, refusing to bow. I'd been bowed before, broken before. Not again. "She's not the enemy," Caelan said, standing beside me now. "You're letting fear write prophecy into truth." But Seraphine only smiled, cold and knowing. "Fear keeps order, Alpha. Without it, wolves forget who they are." I saw it then, the plan beneath her calm. She didn't just fear me. She wanted me gone because I threatened the power she'd built on superstition. The meeting ended with no decision, only the promise of another, and the weight of war pressing on the air. When we left the keep, Caelan's shoulders were tight, his silence heavier than any argument. I tried to speak, but his expression stopped me. That night, the ceremonial hunt began. It was supposed to be a show of unity, all packs running beneath the same moon, honoring Luna's balance. But balance was already lost. I felt it in the way the forest moved, restless. The scent of smoke lingered even before the fire. Caelan led the run. I followed from behind, trying to ignore the way the other wolves avoided my path. The moon hung low, swollen and white, watching. Then came the sound, the break of twigs, the hiss of a blade slicing air. A scream. The first wolf fell before I saw the assassin. Then another. Silver flashed through the dark like lightning. My instincts roared awake. Caelan shouted my name, his voice rough, desperate, but it was too late, the ambush was already closing in. The forest erupted. Wolves shifted mid-leap, claws and fangs meeting steel. The scent of blood was everywhere. I saw Alaric's men first, their armor glinting with red sigils, their blades tipped in silver. Seraphine's hunters flanked them, moving like shadows, precise and merciless. Caelan fought like fury itself, every motion a blur of strength and rage. I stayed close, but when one of the assassins turned toward him, I didn't think, I moved. The blade caught my arm, slicing deep. Pain burned white-hot, and something in me snapped. The fire came before I could stop it. It didn't crawl or flicker, it erupted, wild, sentient, furious. My body shook as light poured from my veins, heat exploding from my chest. The air ignited, forming a shield of flame around me. Every breath was molten. Every heartbeat a roar. The assassins screamed as their silver melted into their own flesh. Trees caught fire. The night itself seemed to bend away from me. I couldn't hear anything but the sound of my own power breaking free. When it was over, smoke blanketed the clearing. Bodies lay scattered, silver and ash mingling on the ground. The wolves that had survived stood frozen, eyes wide, their breaths shallow. One by one, they knelt. And then, silence. Caelan stood in the center of it all, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on me. I expected hatred. I expected disgust. But what I saw was worse, conflict. Pride and terror twisted together in his gaze. He took one step toward me, then stopped, as if afraid that the fire still lingered. I couldn't speak. My throat ached with smoke and shame. I'd meant to save them, but the forest now smelled of death and charred earth. When the council arrived hours later, they didn't see survival, they saw a weapon. They saw proof of the prophecy. By morning, the decree was written. The Flameborn must be contained or destroyed. Caelan was summoned again, ordered to surrender me to the council for judgment. I overheard them that night in the fortress, Caelan's voice low and breaking. If I refuse? Then you'll face exile, the messenger said. And war. I stayed hidden in the shadows, my heart pounding. His silence stretched, heavy, until the messenger left. I waited, trembling, as he leaned against the table, his hands covering his face. When he finally spoke, it wasn't meant for me, but I heard it anyway. You don't know what you are, Lyra, he whispered, voice raw. And I don't know if I can protect you from it. The words cut deeper than any blade. He wasn't wrong. I didn't understand what I'd become, or what was waking inside me. But hearing him say it broke something open. I left before dawn. The fortress was quiet, the sea below black and endless. I didn't leave a note. What could I possibly write? That I was sorry for surviving? That I was tired of being the monster everyone feared? I only took the cloak he'd once wrapped around me and the knife I'd used the night the assassins came. The wind was cold, biting against my face. The moon followed me through the trees, pale and pitiless. Every sound of the forest was too loud, the crack of branches, the whisper of leaves. I felt eyes on me, always watching. I ran until the fortress lights vanished behind me. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But I didn't stop. Because if I did, I'd have to feel it, the ache in my chest where hope used to live. The prophecy had found me again, no matter how far I'd tried to run. And now, it hunted me like a shadow I could never outrun. Somewhere behind me, I knew Caelan would wake to an empty room, to the scent of smoke and salt that I'd left behind. Maybe he'd curse me for leaving. Maybe he'd understand. But I couldn't stay. Not when every breath I took threatened to bring the world to ash. The forest swallowed me whole. The wind carried the distant sound of wolves, calling, searching. The moon sank behind clouds. And for the first time since the fire, I was truly alone. But even as I walked deeper into the darkness, one thought burned inside me, quiet and certain. This wasn't the end. It never was. The world had made me its enemy, and I was done running from it. The forest had turned against me. Every branch seemed to reach for my skin, every gust of wind carried the scent of pursuit. My body was failing, the wound in my side throbbed, deep and burning with the metallic tang of silver. I'd tried to pull the blade out myself, but it was barbed, sunk too deep beneath my ribs. Every breath was pain. Every step, a slow collapse. I stumbled through the undergrowth, the moon flickering between the canopy like it pitied me but would not help. My vision blurred. I could smell blood, mine, thick and sharp, and I knew it would call every predator within miles. Wolves. Hunters. Him. When my knees finally gave out, I fell against a tree, the bark biting into my skin. The cold pressed in, heavy, almost soothing. My fingers trembled as I pressed them to the wound. The silver burned worse than fire, crawling through my veins, poisoning the part of me that still wanted to fight. And then I heard him. A single crunch of leaves, soft, deliberate. My pulse spiked, instinct waking, but I couldn't summon the strength to run. The scent hit first, smoke, cedar, storm-soaked leather. My body knew before my mind did. Caelan. He stepped from the shadows, eye searching the darkness before finding me. The moment he did, everything in his expression broke, anger, fear, something rawer I couldn't name. He didn't speak. He just dropped to his knees beside me, his breath harsh in the quiet. His hands hovered over the wound, trembling. Who did this? His voice was a low growl, not meant for me. I tried to laugh, but it came out a choke. Does it matter? Always, he said. He reached for the blade. I flinched. The silver had fused with my flesh, and the thought of him touching it, touching me, was unbearable. He met my eyes, steady, wordless, then gripped the hilt. The pain was blinding. I bit down on a scream, tasting blood. He pulled it free in one slow, brutal motion, then tossed the blade aside. It landed with a metallic ring that echoed through the trees. Stay with me, he said, voice rough. I wanted to tell him I'd already survived worse. That pain was nothing new. But my body disagreed. The world tilted sideways. The last thing I felt before the dark swallowed me was the press of his palm against my heart, warm and steady. When I woke, there was firelight. Flickering gold on stone walls, the faint drip of water somewhere nearby. The air was damp but warmer than it had been. My cloak was gone. My wound was wrapped in linen that smelled faintly of herbs and smoke. We were in a cave. The sea whispered somewhere beyond, its voice hollow and endless. Cassian sat across from me, bare-armed, his shirt torn and streaked with blood, not all of it mine. He was sharpening his dagger, though his eyes never left me. The tension in his shoulders was familiar, it was how he held himself when he was trying not to feel something. How long was I out? I asked. My voice was hoarse, but he heard. Half a day. His tone was clipped, but softer than I expected. You were lucky. Doesn't feel like it. He set the dagger down and leaned forward. You would have died if I hadn't found you. You should have let me. He froze. The silence stretched, sharp enough to cut through the crackle of the fire. Then, quietly, don't say that again. I turned my face away. Why do you care, Cassian? The council wants me dead. The packs want me gone. Maybe they're right. He was beside me before I heard him move. His presence filled the space, solid, consuming. Because I see you, he said, voice low but certain. All of you. And I don't care what the rest of them think you are. I looked at him then, really looked. The moonlight through the cave mouth caught his face, the scar that curved along his jaw, the exhaustion behind his eyes. He wasn't the ruthless alpha the world painted him to be. He was a man carrying too much silence, too much guilt. Seeing me, I said softly, isn't the same as knowing me. Then let me. It shouldn't have been that easy to believe him. But something in the way he said it, not as a demand, not even a plea, just truth, made my chest ache. He reached for the cloth again, dipped it into a bowl of water, and pressed it to my skin. His hands were steady now, but his breath wasn't. Every touch felt heavier than it should have, deliberate. The cave was too small for the air between us. The water stung. I hissed. He stopped instantly, his thumb brushing against my side. I'm sorry. Don't be. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with everything unsaid. I could feel the weight of his thoughts pressing against mine, the same questions I couldn't ask. Why me? Why now? He looked up, meeting my gaze. The night of the fire, he said, when I saw you burn the assassins. I wasn't afraid of you. I swallowed hard. You should have been. No, his eyes softened, voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid for you. You were alone. You still are. That word hit something I'd buried deep. Alone. Always alone. The kind of solitude that wraps around your bones and convinces you that love is just another kind of weapon. You don't understand what I am, I said. What's inside me, it doesn't stop. It destroys. Maybe. He leaned closer, his breath brushing my cheek. But I've destroyed too. I've killed for power, for survival, for the throne they forced on me. My wolf, he paused, jaw tight, he's violent. Uncontrollable. There are nights I wake up and don't know whose blood is on my hands. So don't tell me what I can't understand. The fire cracked between us, small sparks rising like the ghosts of every word we didn't say. I couldn't look away. Then we're both cursed, I whispered. We're both still alive, he said. The silence after that wasn't heavy anymore. It was fragile. A truce. He reached out, brushing a lock of hair from my face. His fingers lingered, tracing the faint line of a scar near my temple, one of many. His touch was hesitant, almost reverent, as if he feared I might vanish if he was too rough. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead, I leaned into it. Just slightly. Enough for him to know that the distance between us was something I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. For a long time, neither of us moved. The cave breathed around us, the fire's sigh, the drip of water, the slow rhythm of our hearts sinking like some quiet, forgotten promise. Then he did something I didn't expect. He stood and offered me his hand. Come, he said. You need to move. If we stay still too long, the cold will take you again. He led me deeper into the cave. The floor sloped downward, smooth from centuries of water and time. The light faded until only the glow of the torches guided us. When we reached the heart of it, a hollow lit by a thin shaft of moonlight, he stopped. Why here? I asked. He looked up at the beam of light, expression unreadable. Because it's the only place the moon touches when the world is this dark. There was no music, no ceremony. Just the quiet pull of something neither of us could name. He took my hand again, fingers warm and rough, and guided me into a slow, wordless dance. No rhythm. No reason. Just movement. I could feel his heartbeat through his palm, steady, grounding. My body ached, but for the first time, it wasn't from pain. It was from the weight of something I didn't have a name for yet. We moved until the firelight flickered low, until our breaths became the only sound. His hand found the small of my back, my head resting against his chest. His scent was everywhere, smoke, salt, rain. It felt like home and danger in the same breath. I don't know who leaned closer first. I only know that when his lips hovered near mine, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the hell came. Distant, sharp, carried by the wind, the sound of pursuit. We froze. The moment shattered like glass. Kalen's eyes hardened. They've found us. He released me, his warmth disappearing too quickly. The alpha returned, all strength, command, control. But I could still see the flicker of what almost was. Can you walk? He asked. I'll manage. He handed me his dagger, grip firm. Stay close. Don't look back. The air outside had changed, colder, sharper, charged with the scent of steel and blood. The council's guards were near. War had found us again. As we slipped into the shadows of the forest, I looked back once at the cave, the place where, for a few stolen breaths, I wasn't a weapon, or a prophecy, or a curse. I was just a girl who had been seen. And I knew, even as the hunt began anew, that something between us had shifted. Trust had begun, fragile, trembling, but so had the war waiting just beyond the trees. The council chamber smelled of wax and fear, the scent thick enough to choke. I was dragged across the marble floors, my wrists raw from the chains that bit into my skin. Every step was agony, every jeer from the gathered alphas, priests, and nobles, a knife twisting in my chest. I could feel their eyes on me, curious, hungry, and certain I was a monster. Kalen's presence hovered at the edge of my vision, but he did not move forward. He did not intervene. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that I had survived worse than their hatred, yet my voice was swallowed by the chamber's roar. The beta stepped forward. The one I had trusted, the one who had fought beside Kalen, now smiled with cruelty sharpened in his gaze. You thought she could hide it forever, he said. The council deserves to know the truth. She is the daughter of the Flamebringer. She carries the blood that burned the old empire. She is witch, fire incarnate, destruction given form. My heart stuttered. Betrayal tasted bitter, metallic. I had trusted him. I had believed in loyalty. And now, before the world I had only begun to understand, the knife of his words struck deeper than any silver blade ever could. The chamber erupted. The crowd's shouts rose into a cacophony of hatred and fear. They called for my death, chanting over and over, their voices a drumbeat that seemed to shake the pillars of the hall itself. Every instinct screamed to fight, to run, to prove them wrong, but the chains weighed me down. Cassian stepped forward, his hand gripping the edge of the dais, jaw tight. His eyes, usually so steady, flickered with indecision, with fear. He opened his mouth to speak, to deny the claims, but the weight of duty pressed against his throat. I could see it in every line of his body, the alpha torn between loyalty to his counsel and the heart that had already begun to bleed for me. I swallowed the scream that rose in my throat and looked at him. Our eyes met, and for a brief, terrible moment, I saw the fracture in his soul. I whispered, my voice raw, carrying over the din, so even you fear me. It was a challenge, a plea, a wound thrown at him in equal measure. My chains rattled as I moved against them, the iron cold against my burning skin. Something deep inside me snapped, the fire I had fought to control clawing its way out. It started small at first, a flicker in my chest, a whisper of heat beneath my ribs. And then it roared. Flames of silver and gold erupted, spiraling around me in pillars of molten light. The chains hissed and melted, turning to vapor in seconds, as if the metal itself feared the fire I carried. The chamber shook violently. The pillars of flame shot toward the ceiling, lashing out, scorching the stone, burning the air. Screams cut through the chaos as members of the council stumbled, caught in the heat of a power they could not comprehend. Torchlight flickered and went out, smoke curling like serpents through the hall. Cassian moved faster than I could see, shielding me from falling debris, his body a wall between me and the stones cracking above. His hand brushed mine as he pushed me to the side, his eyes wide, heart hammering against his chest. Lyra, he shouted over the roar of fire, stay with me. But I could not. I could not wait for him. I could not stay. My own power, the force that had lain dormant for years, demanded release. I screamed, a sound born from rage, betrayal, and the weight of every injustice I had suffered, and the flames answered. I ran through the collapsing hall, the fire bending around me, licking the edges of the marble, consuming the wooden beams. My feet, bare and blistered, barely touched the ground, carried forward by a fury that was mine and yet older than me. The council shrieked and scattered, their cries lost beneath the roar of the flames. And then, just as suddenly, I was gone from the chamber. Smoke and fire were all that remained. The night itself seemed to burn in my wake, the moonlight caught in the silver-gold pillars of my fury. Every shadow fled before me, every wall crumbled, leaving nothing in my path but ruin and ash. From the chaos, I felt him, Cassian. He had fallen to his knees amid the debris, surrounded by the remnants of the chamber, and he wept. His hands dug into the scorched marble, trembling. The Alpha, the man I had come to trust, bowed before the fire that was me, before the power he had both feared and loved. I could feel his pain from miles away, even as I ran through the forest beyond the keep, my body still alight with the glow of my own power. The prophecy had awakened. The Alpha had knelt before the flame. And in that instant, I realized the truth of the words that had haunted me since Luna's temple. I was both savior and destroyer, and the world would tremble under the weight of what I had become. Every leaf, every branch, every stone I passed seemed to bow to the fire inside me. My vision blurred with smoke and tears. The betrayal had shattered me, but it had also freed me. The chains of expectation, of fear, of doubt, melted away along with the iron that had bound me. The forest itself seemed to breathe with me, alive, acknowledging the awakening of the flameborn. Wolves howled from the shadows, their calls distant but echoing the pulse of my own blood. I could feel them recognizing me, honoring the power that surged from the depths of my soul. And yet, amidst the destruction, a hollow ache remained, the sight of him, broken and weeping in the ruins, had carved itself into me. Cassian, the man who had saved me once and risked everything for me, kneeling among ashes, a silent witness to the storm I had become. I ran on, driven by instinct and fury, through the darkened forest. Silver and gold light trailed behind me, illuminating the trees like a living path of fire. My body ached, my lungs burned, but I did not stop. I could not. The night was mine now, a world reshaped by the betrayal and the fire I wielded. Every shadow was a threat, every whisper a challenge, and yet, I felt a strange clarity in it. I was the flame, and nothing could contain me anymore. I could hear distant cries from the council, orders shouted, men running through the night. But they were nothing against what I had become. The air itself seemed to part before me, the moon reflecting in the golden-silver light that radiated from my veins. In the distance, I glimpsed the ruins of the keep. The pillars I had raised had collapsed, and smoke still curled into the night sky. Yet one figure remained in my mind, kneeling, silent, watching, grieving. Caelan. I had left him behind, yet in my heart, I carried the weight of his despair alongside my own. The prophecy was not just mine, it belonged to us both. I had become the fire that would reshape the world, and he had fallen to his knees before it. I screamed into the night, a sound that carried both rage and sorrow. The world trembled beneath my feet, and the forest seemed to respond, bending and twisting with the energy I had unleashed. I was free, but the freedom was not gentle. It was burning, consuming, and it would not be denied. The moon caught the silver tips of my hair as I ran through the clearing, my reflection shimmering in the puddles left by the recent storm. Every heartbeat echoed like the hammering of war drums. Every breath was fuel for the fire inside me. And through it all, one thought remained, sharp and relentless: the Alpha would kneel before me. The prophecy had begun, and there was no turning back. The world had seen my fury, my power, my truth. And I would not stop until it remembered my name. The night itself seemed to fracture under the force of what I had become. I was no longer the girl chained and mocked at the market. I was flame incarnate, destruction and salvation intertwined. The betrayal had broken me, yet it had forged something far greater than fear or doubt. And in the distance, I could still feel him, the man who had loved and feared me in equal measure, kneeling among the ashes, a testament to the truth we could not yet speak aloud. I would find him again. I would not leave him kneeling forever. But first, I had to embrace the fire. I had to let it consume everything that bound me, everything that had been taken from me, everything that had whispered that I was not enough. The council had made their choice. The world had made theirs. And I, Lyra, the Flameborn, had made mine. I ran on, the silver-gold light of my power blazing behind me, the night alive with the echoes of betrayal, the roar of flames, and the unbroken promise that destiny had not yet finished with me. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it the scent of iron, smoke, and the remnants of fear. I stood at the edge of the battlefield, my bare feet on the cracked stone, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath me. It was no longer the girl who had been dragged through the marketplace, no longer the frightened exile who had cowered before a council's fury. I was the Flameborn. I was fire, I was storm, I was destiny incarnate. Every shiver in my body was electricity. Every heartbeat was power. The moon hung low, impossibly large and red, painting the ruins in a crimson glow that reflected the blood and fury of what was to come. From the shadows, the rival alphas rallied their armies, wolves, soldiers, and men drunk on the promise of conquest. Their eyes were hungry, their weapons glinting, but I could see the tremor beneath their bravado. They could sense it. The prophecy had awakened. I breathed deep. The silver light of my eyes ignited, flaring against the darkness. My hair moved with a life of its own, lifting and twisting as if every strand were alive with energy. I could feel them all, every shifter, every soldier. The rhythm of their hearts beating faster as they realized the force I had become. The Flameborn was not a girl to be caged or controlled. I was the storm that would sweep through their world. Lightning split the sky above, answering a command I did not need to voice. I raised my arms, and it danced around me, serpentine and alive, striking the broken columns and the remnants of walls with deafening crack. The air smelled of ozone and fire, sharp and intoxicating. Every pulse of lightning mirrored the fire in my chest. Every shiver in my body was a drumbeat of power that reached even the farthest centuries. I saw Kalen kneeling in the distance, just as he had before. But this time it was different. He was no longer kneeling in fear or despair. His head bowed in awe, devotion, reverence. His chest heaved as he drew in the charged air, and I knew he felt it, the bond we shared, the tether that neither distance nor battle could sever. I strode across the battlefield, every step sure, every movement untouchable. Flames rose in my wake, yet my skin did not burn. The air itself seemed to bend around me, trembling with anticipation, with respect, with fear. I could feel the enemy alphas faltering as they realized that what stood before them was no human, no shifter, no weapon they could anticipate. I was the culmination of prophecy, power, and pain. Kalen rose as I approached. I reached out, taking his hands in mine, and whispered, "No more sacrifices. No more chains." My voice carried across the battlefield, echoing like a bell of warning and promise. He met my gaze, his hands steady in mine despite the storm raging around us. There was trust there now, raw and unshakable. I could feel it, and it gave me strength beyond my own. The enemy alpha stepped forward, massive, cruel, eyes burning with ambition and hatred. His voice was a roar, trying to command the battlefield, to shake me with words. But I heard nothing except the pounding of my own heart and the rhythm of the earth beneath my feet. I was flame, and flame does not heed threats. I lifted my hands. Lightning crackled at my fingertips, arcs of silver and gold slicing the night sky. The ground trembled, sending cracked spider webbing through the ruins, knocking soldiers off their feet, sending weapons clattering. My voice rang out, carrying power I had never fully understood until this moment. I am not your sacrifice. I am not your weapon. I am not your fear. The enemy faltered. His army wavered. Wolves howled, sensing the shift, the declaration of dominance, the arrival of something older than bloodlines and rivalries. The earth itself seemed to answer my cry, surging beneath their feet. I walked through fire, untouched, unyielding, a living embodiment of silver and gold flame that reflected the moon's blood-red glow. Kalen was at my side, his presence steady, grounding, anchoring the chaos. Together we faced the enemy, two forces intertwined. Alpha and Flameborn, man and fire, destiny and devotion. His hands found mine again, the grip tight but unshakable. We did not fear the power between us, we were the storm and the lightning, the pull and the crash. The battle began, but it was not a battle in the way they expected. I did not charge blindly. I did not strike indiscriminately. I moved with intention, each flash of silver flame cutting a path through their ranks, each command of lightning ripping weapons from hands and shattering shields. Shifters on our side felt it too, the pulse of my power in their veins, the fire in their hearts awakening as if I were the moon goddess herself walking among them. The enemy alpha roared in rage and desperation, trying to summon darkness, to bend the battlefield to his will. But the moon split the clouds, silver light striking through the crimson, illuminating every curve of my face, every line of fire that danced along my limbs. He could see me now. Not a girl. Not a pawn. Not a threat he could understand. I was inevitability made flesh. Kalen lifted his head to meet mine, his expression torn between awe and the unspoken question of what would come next. I saw him kneel again, but not in submission, this was devotion. Reverence. The acknowledgement that he would walk through fire and shadow at my side because he had seen me for what I truly was, and he had chosen me, as I had chosen him. Together, I whispered, and he nodded. There were no more words necessary. We moved as one toward the enemy alpha. The earth trembled under our feet, fissures cracking open, lightning wrapping around us like a living serpent. The world held its breath. Every shifter, every soldier, every whispering shadow on the battlefield knew that this was not a skirmish. This was the reckoning of prophecy, and it carried a cost that none could measure. He raised his arms, summoning everything he had learned in battle, every command he had used to dominate others. I met him with the force of centuries of power coursing through my veins. Silver and gold fire erupted, coiling around him, yet he could not touch me, could not contain me. Lightning answered my call, striking with precision, breaking his defenses, shattering his illusions of control. The earth roared beneath us. Trees bent and splintered. Stone cracked and shattered. Wolves leapt through the chaos, eyes glowing, fangs bared. Soldiers stumbled, awestruck and terrified by the sheer scale of what they witnessed. And I felt it all, the weight of my lineage, the rage of betrayal, the surge of power that had been mine to wield for so long but never fully claimed. At the peak of the storm, I raised my voice, carrying with it every injustice, every fear, every loss that had made me who I was. The sound resonated through the ruins, through the air, through the very bones of the world. I saw the enemy Alpha falter, his power splintering before the inevitability of the Flameborn. Kaelin's hands were on my shoulders, steadying me, grounding me, and I knew in that moment that I was not alone in this. My power was mine, yes, but it was strengthened by him, by our bond, by the trust we had forged in blood and flame and silent moments shared in the forest. The final clash came, a surge of fire and lightning that consumed the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the ruins and the blood-red night. The enemy Alpha fell, his army scattering, their screams swallowed by the roar of the elements. And I stood, unwavering, luminous, untouchable. When the flames receded, I collapsed. Exhaustion claimed me in waves, my body trembling from the release of power I had held too long. Caelin caught me, lifting me into his arms with a strength I had not known he possessed. His chest rose and fell against mine, heartbeat steady and warm. Tears burned my eyes, and I let them fall. The world was quiet now, broken, reborn, and yet beautiful in the devastation. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but not without cost. Every scar on my body, every tremor in my chest, every memory of betrayal and exile had led to this moment. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the ruins, reflecting off my silver-gold eyes. I pressed my face against Caelin's chest, letting the warmth of him ground me, soothe me, remind me that I had survived, that we had survived. The battlefield was silent, save for the whisper of wind and the distant calls of wolves returning to the forests. I was the Flameborn, the girl who had once been chained, jeered at, and feared. I was fire, I was destiny, I was rebirth. And as I rested in Caelin's arms, I knew the world would never forget the night the Flameborn rose, the night the Alpha knelt, the night power claimed its own. And in that quiet, fragile peace, I let myself breathe. The storm had passed, the fire had burned away the past, and though the world was scarred, it was ours to walk through, together, unbroken, unshackled, and alive. The battlefield lay in silence, the air heavy with smoke and the scent of charred stone. I rested in Caelin's arms, my body trembling from the release of power, yet my heart still pounding with adrenaline. Every nerve sang with the echo of the battle, every breath carried the heat of what I had unleashed. The world around us was broken and quiet, a hushed reminder of the storm we had survived, and the one still to come. My hand glowed faintly in his, a soft pulse of silver-gold light, as though even after all that fire, all that destruction, a piece of me still reached for connection, for warmth. His fingers tightened around mine, steadying me, holding me together when the rest of the world seemed bent on tearing itself apart. The wind whispered through the ruins, soft and haunting, carrying questions we could not yet answer. Would you have chosen her? Or feared her too? The voice asked, carrying across the quiet like a shadow, lyrical and cold. My breath caught at the words, because I knew they were not meant for me alone. They were meant for every soul who had watched, who had witnessed the Flameborn rise and wondered whether they could accept what power truly demanded. Is she savior, or curse? The voice lingered, pulling at the edges of the night, curling around the ruins and sinking into the silence. I felt it pressing against my chest, forcing me to confront the truth of who I was, what I had become. I was both destruction and salvation, fear and hope, fire and ash. And yet, even in the midst of the prophecy, even in the wake of battle, I felt a fragile sliver of peace because Caelin was with me, because the bond we had forged was unbroken, and because I had claimed the power that had once been a chain around my soul. The question hovered between us, unspoken but palpable, as if the battlefield itself waited for an answer. I looked at him, and he looked back, his eyes reflecting both the devastation and the light. Neither of us spoke. Words were unnecessary. Our hearts had spoken louder than any counsel, louder than any enemy, louder than the roar of fire and storm that had raged just hours before. If her story stirred something inside you, the voice continued, soft but insistent, almost melodic, subscribe to Sophie's romance collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn, heal, and never let go. It was not a command. It was an invitation, a hand held out to every witness who had felt the fire, the fury, the heartbreak, the triumph. To stay. To watch. To believe. The ruins around us glimmered in the faint light of dawn, the first rays of sun cutting through the lingering smoke. Caelan lowered his head, brushing his lips against mine in a quiet, grounding moment, a tether to reality amidst the chaos. His heartbeat was steady against mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to imagine a world beyond survival, a world where trust and love could exist even after fire and betrayal. But even as warmth and fleeting peace settled over us, the wind shifted. The flames that had been our allies, our armor, faded to embers, leaving the battlefield cold and still. And in that stillness, a whisper rose from the ruins, carried not by wind but by something older, something darker. She is not the only one. The voice was low, ominous, prophetic. It slithered through the stones, through the scorched earth, through the very air we breathed. My pulse quickened, the hair on my arms rising, and I felt the stirrings of danger yet to come. In the distance, another flame ignited, deeper red than the fire I had wielded, darker, older, carrying a hunger that made my chest tighten and my claws ache. It burned with intention, with memory, with power that rivaled my own. I could feel it resonating in the bones of the earth, in the nerves of every shifter who had survived the night, in the very blood that ran through me. Caelan's hand tightened around mine. His eyes met mine, reflecting both determination and fear. We had survived the night, had bent prophecy to our will, but the world was far from finished. There was another alpha rising, another storm gathering, and the war for the flame had only begun. I rose slightly, my body trembling with the remnants of my own power, feeling the pull of the new force in the distance. The ground beneath us seemed to vibrate with it, whispering promises of conflict, of challenges, of power yet to be claimed. My silver gold eyes locked on the distant flame, heart thrumming with anticipation, rage, and resolve. I was the flame-born, and I had claimed my power, but now the world would demand that I defend it, again and again. The ruins of the battlefield were quiet but alive with memory. Every shattered column, every scorched stone, every fallen figure carried the echoes of our triumph and the warnings of what was to come. I felt it all, the weight of prophecy, the pull of destiny, and the undeniable, aching tether to the man beside me. Caelan was not just my anchor, he was my equal in this storm, the alpha who had fallen to his knees and risen again because of me. A shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from the realization that nothing, not fire, not betrayal, not prophecy, had prepared me for what lay ahead. The new alpha's flame burned with a deliberate, relentless hunger. It was older than ambition, deeper than desire for power. It was a test, a challenge that the world itself seemed to issue, and I would not, could not, fail. I drew in a shaky breath, the wind tugging at my hair, the embers of my own fire still faintly glowing across my skin. Every instinct in me, every flicker of silver and gold, screamed readiness. The battlefield was no longer behind me, it stretched forward into an uncertain future. And yet, I did not feel fear. I felt purpose, raw and unrelenting, burning hotter than any flame I had ever conjured. Caelan's eyes searched mine, silent question and promise all at once. I nodded, though words were unnecessary. Our bond, forged in fire, betrayal, and survival, was the only certainty in a world suddenly teetering on the edge of chaos once more. Together, we would meet whatever waited in the shadows. Together, we would face the new alpha rising from the depths, the ancient power that sought to challenge me, to test me. The red flame in the distance pulsed, deep and knowing, almost as if it were aware of me, aware of what I had become. My body tensed, senses sharp, heart hammering with anticipation. I could feel the threads of destiny weaving tighter, the prophecy stretching into the future like an unbroken chain. And I understood, this was not just my fight. This was our war, the war of fire and blood, of Alpha and Flameborn, of the world that refused to forget what had been unleashed. The wind stilled. Silence stretched over the ruins, thick and electric, as if the world were holding its breath. Even the wolves in the distance, hidden in the forest, were still, sensing the tremors of power that had shifted the balance. The sun's first rays struck the ruins, illuminating the scars of battle, the pillars of stone that had withstood fire and storm, and the figure of me, standing at the edge of what had been, and staring into what was coming. I breathed slowly, letting the rhythm of my power calm the storm within me. The glow in my hand faded, leaving only the memory of what had been, and the promise of what I would become. My gaze did not leave the distant flame, my ears alert to every sound, my heart attuned to the rhythm of the world that had once tried to break me. The voice returned, a whisper threaded through the ruins and the wind, soft but impossible to ignore. She is not the only one. It was a warning, a prophecy, a lure. I could feel it deep in my bones, a resonance with the fire that still coursed through me, a call to prepare, to rise, to fight once more. I turned slightly, glancing at Caelan, and saw in his eyes the reflection of my own resolve. We had survived betrayal, we had claimed our power, and we had stood as one against fate. But we both knew the truth now, the world was not finished with us. Another alpha rose, another storm gathered, and the war for the flame was only beginning. I clenched my fists, feeling the last remnants of fire stir in my veins, a quiet hum of power and purpose. My silver-gold eyes narrowed on the distant flame, heart thundering with readiness. This was the beginning of something greater, something that would test every bond, every limit, every shred of courage I possessed. And I would not back down. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of destiny in each motion, the ruins beneath my feet bearing witness to the birth of the Flameborn. Caelan matched my pace, silent, unwavering, a constant in a world suddenly teetering on the edge of chaos. Together, we would face the rising threat. Together, we would shape the future. Together, we would burn. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the new Alpha's flame pulsed, dark and ancient, calling, waiting, challenging. The war had begun, and the world would never be the same again. I drew in a long, steady breath, feeling the fire within me respond, the storm in my chest echoing across the ruins. This was no longer survival. This was reclamation. This was power claimed, destiny embraced, and the beginning of a legend that would shake every pack, every alpha, every shadow that dared to rise against me. I glanced at Caelan, and in the quiet understanding between us, I knew we were ready. The dawn of a new battle was upon us, and nothing, no fire, no shadow, no betrayal, could stop what we had become together. The Flameborn had risen. The Alpha had kneeled. And the world would never forget the night power claimed its own.